All right. Do you have any big questions, bro?
I do not. I do not. Although I guess literally what I was just reading before I got into this call was it was this Reddit post that was posing this question, and the jumping off point was this statement by this academic that said like in the 21st century, he made this claim that if you're not educated on basic game theory and prisoner's dilemma, then you're not, like, we can't consider you educated just because of how fundamental it is to like our behaviors and what have you right now. And so that caused a discussion. It was kind of interesting to tap into, and that's a topic that I think like I naturally come back to a lot, and we've talked about it in a couple of episodes here. But yeah, I mean, this idea, I think, that is always interesting to me, where the entire field of economics exists because humans aren't rational, right? Like otherwise it'd just be math. Like you would know exactly what everyone would do because they would always do the rational thing. But right? Like it's like people come together, you get these emergent phenomenon that interact where people are just like doing really stupid shit and things that would even defy what you think you would do or anyone would do, even at a small level, right? Shout out to that book, Predictably Irrational, too, from Dan Ariely, which that one, I think, in terms of like popular books or literature that enter the mainstream, that one was the one that really changed it for me. Like I was like, holy, I can't trust myself, can't trust anybody. So
You no, I feel like I read that book like 15 years ago or something. That one was classic.
yeah.
Do you remember the book Thinking Fast and Slow?
Yeah, another classic.
Yeah, that was probably one of the first books that talked about. So that guy Daniel Kahneman or whatever, he talks about how like economics is a study of like if humans were like completely rational, but since they're not, we have psychology with all the biases and stuff. And I think he introduced the idea of system 1, system 2 thinking. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's been a while for me too as well, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting. I mean, obviously like the fact that humans aren't rational creatures. I mean, probably talk all day on that. I wonder if they should make game theory a core subject, or psychology or econ, or one of those. I know we always fall back on what the discussion of nowadays when you teach kids. We all grew up with math, history, science, and what was the other one? English. Those are the four. And then I guess physical education. And we're just like, okay, well, if we can go back and make 4 core subjects now in the age we live in, the digital age, what are the 4 core subjects? I mean, do you think psychology or econ / does game theory fall under that bucket?
Yeah, I think so.
You think that makes the list? You think that pushes one of those 4 up?
I think so.
What do you remove? What do we get?
We'll get there, but I think when we last talked about this, it was challenging to think about what you would remove or what constitutes like the absolute core minimum. But I think you absolutely have to, because it teaches you intellectual humility. And some of it is less theoretical, right? Some of them is like really real world applicable. I remember even in psychology, we learned that even eyewitness testimony, right? Like something that in our legal system is like super powerful. Like you saw him do that and he was wearing the red shirt with a beard, right? Even that is remarkably untrustworthy, especially when people are in stress or whatever the situations. And I think that examples like that are so important and highlighting like how like you know how error ridden our thinking and perceptions can be, even when it's something of like, this is what I saw, like I'm 100% sure I saw him do that thing. But yeah, to your second question, what would you kick out? I mean, I think maybe to like break it down a little bit. I mean, like it's like K to 12, right? Maybe it's more of like a phased, like kind of evolving curriculum. Maybe it doesn't, even if it doesn't have to continue and persist throughout. Although I think there's a good argument that it should. As long as I think that just even injecting it at the foundation, that you're fallible, that you have all these biases and confirmation biases and fallacies, like, I mean, that would be good. Oh, remember we talked about the marshmallow experiment? Like what would, like let's talk about that level. Like what are maybe like, what are some of the, like the things that we could like start to, lay down at that level of emergence for kids? Like, I don't know. So anyway, ramble aside.
My first thought is you teach them how to meditate.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Just because I think it'd be useful. Like, once they start, identifying with themselves and things, and then, that I think that's when stuff starts taking root. I don't know how to describe it though, but I don't know, making kids meditate or teaching them how to meditate for like 5 or 10 minutes a day is pretty cool.
Yeah, we always go back to this, man. It is literally the first thing we kicked off this little podcast experiment with, which is, again, remember we talked about the mechanism of thought. Like it's all about meta thinking and metacognition, right? Like how do we disrupt that automaticity for people? And I think meditation is a great example of that, for sure.
I wonder if it's how useful it is to be unaware of your own ego.
How useful?
To not. Oh man, I literally just said a statement that deserves a lot of context. That I'm not sure that I could step up to the plate and fill up that context. But you know how like some people, I guess I'll just start talking as if people understood me. But
well, you can always substitute ego with like your personality, right, or your identity as well.
Right. Do I need to define the illusion, like the self as an illusion? Let me think. Like, okay, so I think if you're unaware of your ego, you take yourself like super seriously, it does motivate you to act a certain way. You know what I mean? You take yourself super seriously. So like if I identify with like this idea of hack, and I'm like, hack is the type of person that A, B, C, and D. Maybe some of A, B, C, and D is good stuff, and some of it is bad stuff. But the stuff that's good stuff, I'm gonna be super motivated to go do that because it's my identity. It's like if I see somebody like say something that disrupts that identity of what I think hack is, then I'm gonna be up in arms about that shit. Not just up in arms to like argue about it, but also probably up in arms to like make things happen to prove that A, B, and C and D exist. And whether that's like I go try to make like a shit ton of money in my life, or I try to, I don't know, like get like 10% body fat, or whatever the case may be. Like, I mean, it could be used, I guess, to achieve things that are considered good. So like, is ego always bad? Because generally when we speak about ego, I think it's inferred that it's a negative most of the time, or a lot of time at least.
Yeah. I have extremely strong views on this subject.
Oh yeah, this is
But
great.
what do you, yeah,
Take it away, bro.
but what do you think? Yeah, what do you think?
Um, I don't know what I think. I was just posing the question. I was just um I don't know that it's always bad. I think it's a mechanism of the mind for the reason. It's a mechanism of the human, like it's a feature,
Hmm.
not a flaw. And I'm guessing like obviously in some cases it can be bad, in some cases it can be worse. I'm sure it exists on a gradient. But it's there by design for a reason. I feel like our bodies and minds and the way that we came up, like maybe we don't know what that reason is, but like a lot of things get automated a certain way for a reason. The ego, your opinion, and like so you don't have to like I don't have to wake up every morning and kind of be like, okay, well, what's important to me, and like go through this
Yeah.
whole like list. But like if I already have an idea of what hack is, and then I can just go and tell that to other people and find people to help me reinforce that idea, then I can just be like, oh yeah, like this is hack, like this is what I do, this is A, B, C, this is what's important to me. I don't have to rethink that every single morning. Imagine if I have to wake up every single morning
Hmm.
and rethink like my own identity and then decide like um, so I think it's a feature, not a flaw. I think in some cases, obviously, like the feature can turn into a flaw if you're like completely like unaware of it. But I think I don't think it's a yes or no. I think it's a gradient, and kind of copped out on an answer there. But what do you think?
No, I mean, I think that is the answer. That is absolutely the answer. Uh, it's funny because I think a part of that type of inquiry where you first kind of realize uh, that this idea of you is less uh, like stable or a given um, than you thought, right? That, like you said, something that you have to be extremely protective about. And it was something that like exists within you as another like piece in you, not the actual you, right? This idea of who you are and all the little values that you've downloaded the course of your life. So um, that right, like things are neither good or bad. Um, it's an arbitrary like evaluation assessment that we make according to like God knows how many like factors, um, but yeah, I'm totally with you. I have strong feelings always against like any manifestation of spiritual materialism, which is another word worth defining, where um, any type of superiority that you start to gather as you start, as you go through your journey, right? Like you start to feel better, and even the idea that you recognize your ego and you assess your ego launches you into like a meta ego, right? That doesn't like the ego and what have you. But I think that the question is interesting because back to the game theory bit or back to, systems thinking. I, and another thing that I think I lose a lot of people when I try to like engage with them on their grounds of thinking, which is that the rules are different at different levels of analysis or at different like permutations or iterations, right? And so I think egoic living is obviously very strong in more like survivalist and shorter term games, right? Um, but it becomes untenable, I think, once you have to repeat that game over and over, um, into the end of that timeline. Uh, it's just not sustainable, right? And there's going to be people who are like also playing the ego game. And if you are like punching high enough and up enough, like forget whether it's the world that ego checks you or other people, like you will get ego checked by something. And I think that shattering will happen, and it forces growth, right? It necessitates some type of growth. So I mean, all of human existence is arguably founded on dissatisfaction, how we're hardwired to literally never be happy. And then as soon as we get something, it is a law as true as the law of physics, any law in physics, that as soon as we think we get what we want, we'll immediately want the next thing. And that, I think that comes from like an egoic drive for more. So yeah, I think it's important, and also wearing your ego, it's like the clothes you wear, right? Or how you present yourself. It goes like, it signals, it's such a good shorthand to your point. Beyond just a shorthand for yourself to quickly access who you are and what's important, how you should act and govern your own behavior. It also outwardly presents like a predictable persona that people can engage and grapple with, like their own ego like connects to your ego, and I know like what to expect. And really society is really just founded on the fact that I can expect predictable behaviors from any person I meet, because there's this implied understanding that we are the same by some same cut, right? So yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting, and I'll close off on it's one of like, I think the oldest sci-fi tropes or themes, which is as messy and crappy and as the ego is, are at what cost or is there kind of like an inflection point where as we start to erase elements of our ego for clearly logical, rational returns, like clearly if we could like delete whatever it is that causes anti-vaxxers to think about that as society, like, and if we could press a button that deletes it, like we should delete it. It's really like super obvious. Like,
wait, delete the ability to have an ego?
Well, I think it's not,
or just that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, so but I think it's like piecemeal, right? It's not. It's the entire idea or institution of the self or the ego. As you start to shift like elements of the individual out to elements of society, right? The ego starts to dissolve, and whether it's something that we handle just naturally through conversation or cultural transformation, versus where technology will start to maybe enable a little bit more of that, right? And then for like the greater good. So
so there's like individual ego, right? Like the idea of Hacker, the idea of Steven. But like, how does that correlate with like collective ego? Like when you identify with a group, but then like this whole group of people identify around this like idea. Let's say like anti-vaxxers, right? I mean, that's obviously like, I mean, there's a specific group of people when you see like anti-vaxxers that, and they probably have a bunch of ideas that they kind of like, you know, I guess like ascribe to as well, the anti-vaxxers group. And obviously an individual could be an anti-vaxxer, but then there's like a group, like collective, like even like, you know, obviously if, I don't know, if I identify with like, I like watching the Redskins play or something, right? Like that's like a collective ego thing, you know? And then you identify with this team. And then sometimes it even gets to the point where I like this team, you like this team. So, and my team's winning and we're talking shit and now we have to fight. And, you know, just, how does that work when it's like not an individual, but like a collective thing too? Or is that just, am I talking about the same thing? It's just like an individual thing, but then like there's multiple individuals now and you're just.
So I don't know the answer to that, but I have some thoughts. I think in the real world, in the grounded reality, we would call that, like, you know, probably draw a circle around things like when you talk about collective ego, like the studies around sociology or international relations or all that kind of stuff, the game theory stuff. But it's funny too, because as humans, we actually anthropomorphize, or take non-human objects and treat them as if they were human, right? When we say North Korea, I'm not thinking about like all the individual North Koreans. I'm actually not even thinking about, like, to some degree I kind of think about the government when I say say North Korea. Like that's probably the closest proxy. But like when you start talking about nations and whatever, you just like have this like general vague thing, and you almost treat them like it's a person. Like, we say China, right? China is actually, I don't know of anyone, when you say China, it would be interesting see what people like pops into their mind, right? For some people, maybe like Wuhan virus spreading, like slanty-eyed people, but the idea is that I would hypothesize, if we were able to run the study, that in most cases you ask these things, and people would have like a humanized version of it, of that thing, because that's what we do. We ascribe human characteristics to a lot of things that aren't even human. It's even like large, like conceptual bodies, right? And it's funny, like when it's a quick aside, but of all places where I first learned of this concept, it was in English class. The word metonymy, it just means when you refer to like the whole, rather than the part. So anyway, but where to go now, that I think that's a little bit more in the practical world, but where it kicks back more spiritual to me, which is that I think we naturally kind of consider consciousness and ego like very related, right? It's almost like the less capacity for consciousness that something has, the less capacity or potential for ego, and the more capacity, the more potential for ego, right? Like a plant has no ego, and a dog has somewhat sense of an ego. Like we name them, and we, it's a boy, it's a girl, that dog looks like an old dog. Anyway, where I'm going with this to close it off is like pantheism, which is, does everything have like a degree of consciousness in our bodies, right? Like do my cells have ego? Does like the bacteria in my stomach, do they have a small ego? Is ego just consciousness? Do they self-identify? Is it just awareness? It has to be awareness, right? So anyway, that was a bit of definitely a ramble, but some of these early morning thoughts around how like something small at an atomic level manifests, right, in a more macro sense.
Is the ego the feature of the human, like specifically, and the more like perhaps like, because like my idea of ego is like you have to be able to label something, and like for instance, when you say, okay, even as a cell, a human has identified this little like thing in the body. It's like that's the cell, that little individual part, and that little thing is a cell, right? We have drawn a boundary around this physical thing, called it a cell, and obviously in the physical world, there's no boundary. It's like this little thing of this whole, but like you don't even like separate the single from like the whole. The fact that we label this thing cell so that we can hold the idea in our mind is the start of like, it's something only like a human can do. And I'm guessing maybe some animals can do it to a super lower degree because they don't have like a prefrontal cortex or whatever part of the brain that allows us to label and hold symbols and such.
Yeah. I mean, I'll throw out an example that is interesting thing about is Hive hive insects, right? Ants and bees.
Oh, those things are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, when you observe some of their behavior, and let's say like that you have a whole mess of them, and you just tap one side or you stimulate one thing, like that ripples out like when you touch like a nerve almost, right? Like there is a like and ants are arguably not individuated in any way, but they are. Whereas like our brain cells don't really operate um, in a independent way that's very accessible to us. But looking at an ant, which is really just one node in this consciousness that's not individuated but behaves and makes the right call, like at that localized level of experience for the ant, is crazy, right? Octopus having like their arms move independently and like, what is it? I'm just gonna ballpark it. I just saw a documentary, but like, I don't know, majority of their network is actually not in their brain, it's actually in their arms.
Wow.
Yeah, because the dexterity, like imagine if like the Doc Ock and Spider-Man, like maybe I'm just talking to you and like I have an arm back here that's like cooking and it's making independent, like it's like doing all of that judgment, and I don't even like, I'm not even like doing anything there, right? But to the degree that it's effective, efficient, then things like kind of shoot back into the main brainstem. But yeah, I don't know. I think it would be interesting to study ants a little bit more.
Yeah, it's almost as if an ant is like a cell.
Yeah.
And then like collectively, all the ants equals like, let's say, the entire human body.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious if the ego revolves around our ability to be able to put a label on something, to kind of like, oh yeah, that's Steven right there, and then every single idea I have of Steven is that's what it is, and we're probably friends because my ideas around you is probably similar to your ideas around yourself. And then imagine if like we met a person that completely disagreed with that. It's like, oh yeah, Steven's not, Steven, yeah, that dude fucking sucks. You know what I mean? And then like, when you see someone that clearly like has this belief, then you almost feel like this urgency to like defend it. You know what I mean? To, if you were like, I don't know, it's like a very instinctual. It's really interesting when the ego gets activated. Like when you're clearly in an egoic situation and you're like, damn, I feel like I need to do something here. And then you're even aware of it, but then you can't just because you're aware of it doesn't mean you can like make yourself like turn it off. Like that mechanism is so powerful that you can't just and I've seen that happen to me, like, like even last night, I was telling you before we got on this call, we had like this championship game that we played against a bunch of people that so we played a flag football game, and we played against a team that it's always like a close game, but they've beaten us the last few games we played, but every time they win, it's always like, poor sportsmanship, and just like whoever wins just like starts like howling in other people's faces and stuff, and just like, shit like that, right? I'm just like, man, we're just playing co-ed flag football, bro. But then like when it gets taken to a certain level, you really want to win this game because you're like, I don't know. And then when you lose, or like, when someone does something that's kind of like just poor sportsmanship, I'm just like, yo, I really want to win this game, because I mean, it's just a college flag football game on a Tuesday night, and all of it's pay to play. But it'd be so nice to just get this one past them, and but it's interesting when you see yourself get active, and then you lose, and you still care about it, and you're like, I care, but I know it's my ego, so I shouldn't care. But then like, you still care. Yeah, I mean, I think that mechanism is super interesting just to observe because you can't turn it off.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting topic, at least personally, because I mean, I know that it flies in the face of uh, like spiritual inquiry to even ask this question, but like, what's the goal, right, of all of this like dissection of ego and its mechanisms? And you know, and I'm beginning to think that like the ego is not meant to be rejected or any, like, I mean, I think we should be for 90% of our lives, like actually in our ego, right? It's just not letting it run away from you and take, and you know, and cause you undue suffering. Like it's natural to have an ego. It's natural to identify, have those things. It's just being able to, I think, periodically log out or recognize when it's gotten out of hand. You know, I've gone into this metaphor for myself when it comes to balancing all of this stuff, where I consider my ego my video game character, my RPG character, right? And when I log in to play the game, like, man, yeah, I'm totally about my character. Like I'm trying to up level, you know, his skills, trying to craft some stuff. I even care about, like, I don't know about you. When I used to play RPGs, I'm like, yo, that cape is like red. That's cool. Like that's like, you know, I like that. Like I also liking that I can put a red cape on my guy and like he looks like the way I want him to look. Right. And then I also like the fact that I can look at another person's character and be like, oh, he's got a blue cape. Like that's cool. He likes blue. Like that's fun. That's like that's, you know what I mean? Like that's something we get to do as humans through ego, like that through the ego. But you know, you gotta log out every once in a while, right? And so then that's where all you do is go up to the right, hit log out, and then you're not in it anymore. Like I'm not, but like if I'm playing that character, I'm in the thick of it. Like I'm trying to win this boss fight or all those little things. Like I'm not me. I should forget me. I should forget that this is a game, and I should enjoy the game, and I should enjoy whether or not I win and beat the boss or I lose and I have to figure out how to beat him next time. But like I think it's that balance of letting yourself be a part of the game fully as an actor, right? And Alan Watts talks a lot about this, about like kind of, I think what makes Hinduism very distinct in its approach to spirituality is this idea that we are all just here with little masks on a stage, and life is actually just a drama unfolding, and these elements of drama are what makes, like, it is life. It is the play of life, and we play it out, you know. And you have gods that appear, and they have their own masks, and we're all playing little things. So I think I think I'm gonna lay down another thing. Fundamental thing that we keep going back to is, I think, the concept of a game. We talked about games in so many different ways, right? I think it's such a useful construct. You know, one that invokes fun, but also meaning. Like games are meaningful depending on what they are, but it's always a game. Even the game of survival, as like as terrible as that can be, right? I don't want to diminish like survival games, but you know. Oh, last bit, by the way. Have you heard of like DayZ and all those like apocalyptic games where you get one life, and if you die, you lose everything? Like you basically spawn into an open world as a naked character, and you just take so much work to even get the basic stuff. Like, oh, you got a stick. You're like, finally, oh, you got whatever, right? And it is like, but when you die, you lose everything. And the craziest human interactions have emerged out of that concept that you know, where people, there's like little gangs and people are doing like all these like weird, they're capturing each other, holding each other hostage. Like, um, it's so interesting, man. So interesting.
Do I want to play that game?
No, just watch YouTube videos. That's what I do now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny, man. Yeah, if you think about growing up playing video games, and games get like super realistic nowadays. When we were kids and we are playing, I don't know, like I don't know what games you were playing, but I mean, I had Super Nintendo in my time, so we had what Zelda, and then maybe I played Final Fantasy 3, and then later on, I'm sure maybe you caught some Final Fantasy 7 during PlayStation times, and then like those games when we're little, you look back on them and they're so fucking pixelated. It's just like
yeah, it's like 16-bit, 32-bit.
Yeah, it's like super pixelated, but it tells the story, and then you see this character that's like kind of, you start out with this dude with like only like 3 little hearts, and then like you have like your little sword. You can't even beat up like this like stupid little monster that exists outside of your house. Then like by the end of the game, you've grown so much, you come back and you just like flick this little it just isn't like you beat up this boss, and like every slash you kill him like 9999 like whatever, just because you're so strong now. And obviously like, and the whole time you're playing the game, even when you log off and you log back in, you're looking forward to like playing it again, and you see your character build up, and that's the joy you get from playing that game, right? But if you think about life as an RPG, and even though like all games have got like, I mean, I haven't fucked with an RPG in a long time, but I imagine the best one that came out in the last, like, let's say 1 or 2 years, whatever the consensus best one is. I don't even know the name of it, but it's probably really fucking realistic now. You know what I mean? It's probably something that like, you can like get really into. But imagine like, no matter what, the best RPG is always going to be the game of life. It's kind of like, this is the only game we've all been playing since we're little. I've seen myself like level up over the years. If you think about like, myself and my friends and stuff too, and I look back, on myself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I still remember, what was I like when I was 20 or like 10 or like whatever. And here I am now. Like, how was I doing financially, or how was I doing, in terms of like mental development? How was I doing in terms of physical development? Who were the friends I have? Like, like what quests have I gone on? What monsters have I beaten? Right? Like the game of life is the ultimate RPG. There's nothing that's gonna be more real than this. But I mean, I do like the RPG analogy. I do like and I think something that stood out to me when you were saying is like, well, hey, when you play this game, you gotta remember to log out once in a while to kind of like understand that it's a game sometimes, because then you can enjoy it. How do you log out of the game of life to it? Like when I say log out, I don't mean like end it. I mean like what do you do to remember that life is a game? You know what I mean? What practices, perhaps like personally for you, have you found to be able to, I guess, to quote you, to log out? I mean, I don't want to misconstrue what that means. It probably just means realizing that it's a game while you're playing the game, and then hopping back into it like a little bit later.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. There's so many answers to that question, but maybe this one's the first one that comes to mind. I found that for me, the way that my mind works, that like I can't just like drop into meditation. Like people talk a lot about stillness, and you don't have, things don't have to be goal oriented. Like embrace that create that vacuum. But if I'm really wound up in the game, right, and if I've just added layer on layer, and things are knotted and whatever, at a certain point, like I can't just do the sit down. So I think physical exertion, like in terms of like maximal drain, like I mean you are literally going to empty out the tank, and and there's that itself is also a ladder, right? Maybe maybe you can do short spurts like a football game or whatever to start. But I do think that that's where and why I've become so passionate about running in the past couple years. Because running, and I tell people like, up front, like I used to hate running so much. Like as soon as weightlifting and 5x5 became popular, I was like, yes, like I found my confirmation like guys in this thing that as long as I don't have to run, and like interval training came out and all this stuff, and I just put running on the back burner for so long. Yet it is the single most popular sport in the world, and there's books come out titled Born to Run and examines running through that lens. But my answer for logging out would be at this point in time running, precisely because it is boring. I think boredom is a fundamental part to any type of meditation and a precursor to you being able to log out. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, like you have to remove stimuli so that you are just by yourself for once. There's nothing to engage with except for reality, right? Just removing things until there's just the now. I think running is good. Oh, and I'll add one more. I keep saying this bad habit of mine, always adding one more, but so that I guess that's a long duration, like maybe low stimulus type of angle on logging out and logging out. But on the flip side, I think a quick injection hit of logging out and mindfulness would be, I know I just use this word, but AWE. Like, and few things are as awe-inspiring as nature, right? I think you put a majority of people in front of the Grand Canyon, no matter how many times they've seen Grand Canyon, and in that moment, there's a logging out of some sort. Like wow, the world is so much more like who am I? What am I? What the heck, and then you also ask yourself, like, really, this is just essentially a big crack in the ground, something, but yet I'm like on my back foot, like I'm on my heels, like in the presence of this like magnificent thing.
Just a big crack in the ground.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's a funny way to put the Grand Canyon.
It really is. Like,
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's
yeah.
just I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Like there's a million cracks in the ground. Like an ant walks by like a million Grand Canyons on a day, just like on the sidewalk, right?
This is the biggest crack in the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
In North America, the biggest crack in the ground.
Right, exactly. We do all sorts of things to bear witness to this gigantic, yeah.
I always forget the nature piece until like I'm in nature, and then I mean I do have an affinity towards nature and like feeling small, and I think the feeling small is kind of like the logging out. It's like when you're like holy shit, like because so I just went to a wedding in San Francisco, and it was the wedding, like the hotel we stayed at was like on Highway 1, and so it like literally just overlooks the Pacific Ocean. And I've never I mean, I've seen the Pacific Ocean before, and it's been a while, but like just even the memory of when I saw it last time, and then like standing there and be like, holy shit, look at this ocean. It's like windy, and there's like, you can see waters like on both sides as far as you can see, in like the mountains that overlook the water. And you just feel like yo, insignificant, so insignificant that the games we play as humans like barely even matter. I mean, they don't. Ultimately in the grand scheme of things, like, they don't, but like, and I think we logically know that, because if you think about it, like obviously, probably in like 75 years, like 99.9% of the people we know, or maybe 99 is too high, but let's say in like the next 125 years, probably 99% of the people we know probably are gonna be like old as fuck or like dead. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then you throw another 100 years on that, then everyone we know for sure, like, is gonna be dead. So
Yeah.
like what we're ultimately doing, the games we're playing now, logically I explain that to you, you understand that they don't matter in the grand scheme of like, you know, of anything that matters to us now. And you understand that logically, but to be reminded of that, like, because nature is so vast and you're standing in front of this ocean and you're like literally this little fucking speck and you look out into this magnificent like vastness and like no one even has to say anything. You know, like kind of like when you're like looking up on a starry night in the middle of the desert and you see, you know, thousands of stars and you're like holy shit, like nobody has to say anything. Like everybody just, even if everyone just stood there and just shut the fuck up for like, you know, 5 minutes and just look at the stars, everyone understands the same ultimate truth. Like it doesn't matter. And I think for some people that's fucking scary as shit. Which is probably a mechanism of the ego to go back to it. But I think it's amazing, you know, it's like the ultimate like log out. It's like, holy shit, it doesn't matter. And then when you come back into society and then you understand that you're playing the game, you understand that it doesn't matter because you're playing a game and the fact that it is a game and that's what makes it fun. Then it starts like mattering again, but in a good way, maybe. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like I can tell you all this shit logically. I can be like, yo, there's billions of fucking stars and there's trillions of galaxies. I don't even know how many. And we're just like this little like speck, like the Earth is not even like a thing in in anything. And our whole lives is on this Earth. And there's like, you know, like 8 billion or 7 billion people. So how much does like one little thing like really matter? You probably be like, yeah, that's cool. But then like, you know, like if I put you in front of the ocean or if I put you in the middle of the desert and you look up at the stars and, you know, without any words, you just like, oh shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's powerful, man, for sure. So it reminds me of this concept called the overview effect. Have you heard of that one?
Is that related to the pale blue dot thing?
Yeah. So it was like well documented when astronauts first flew up and they got to see Earth from that vantage point. Like they were overwhelmed with the same feeling. Actually, I'm gonna get goosebumps just thinking about it, but it caused a paradigm shift in the way that they saw everything, right? I don't know if it was Buzz Aldrin or someone who's like, yeah, I just wanted to go down and just grab every politician by the scruff and just be like, do you know what you're fucking doing, right? And it's also funny because Jeff Bezos, whatever, is trying to go up there into space, and everyone's like, it's 50-50 chance he either like it humanizes him a little bit more, or he just like decides he actually really wants to keep shooting for world emperor of that pale blue dot. So I think it's such a powerful point that you brought up where I am very careful when I speak about nature to not fall into the naturalistic fallacy. Just because a lot of people I think put nature on I think they morph it into this, they over romanticize it, right? Like, you know, nature is fucking brutal. Nature is it's nasty, right? Like nature. But there is something to be said how we used to live in cultures where you were always in nature. Like you were living in a world where you always saw the stars every night. And you even saw the changes in the stars, right? Like, oh, that galaxy just supernovaed, and now it looks like a pale pink cloud on that section of the sky. Like you were so attuned to the world around you that you would notice something like that, right? You would notice that the constellations change as the Earth revolves on its axis, right? And that there's fall constellations and summer constellations, and they would maybe look different like the next time the summer constellations roll back around. you would see that like your food came out of the ground, right? Or you would have to see like, in order for you to have meat that day, you oftentimes, like, yeah, even as kids, you would, as soon as you were old enough, you hey, go out there and kill one of those chickens, we're supposed to have it for tonight, right? And you had to like see this chicken that what you raised up, and now you're like, my mom tells the story how she had a pet chicken, she like, you know. And
What happened to that pet?
I don't know if they ended up, maybe. Oh yeah. But, so I think that is a very powerful thing, just to even see nature happening. And again, it starts to erase the artificial boundaries and divisions that we put up around ourselves as being separate from nature, right? You know, since the beginning of time, literature and stories have framed us as man versus nature, right? Like, how can we circumvent, overcome it?
That's a crazy societal metaphor, by the way, but I just wanted to bookmark that because go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, always. But then Alan Watts reminds us, right? Like we didn't come into this world. This idea that we like popped in a simulation or logged into a character and then we popped in here. We didn't. It's not that we just apparated into existence. We actually came out of it. Like just like a tree comes out of the ground, humans, the substrate, right, of whatever this is, whatever energy, whatever nature thing, we came out of it. Like you know,
we are nature.
Yeah, exactly. We are nature. We are still tethered to this thing that we came out of. And I think that was a big shift, right? You know.
That's a huge shift. I didn't realize that till I was like 30.
Yeah.
Like,
right, exactly.
When I say realize that, I mean like, holy shit, like we came out of this shit just like everything else. I mean, I knew that obviously like on a logical level, but the first time I realized that was when we were in nature, and I was on my first shrooms trip, and I was like, holy shit, we came out of the ground just like these fucking trees and shit. And so like similar to the rocks, the trees, the mountain, the earth, like we are the universe. We are like, I know that sounds like super hippy dippy or whatever, but to have that internal realization out in nature, like holy shit, that was definitely not that's not a there's knowing, and then there's like knowing, like there's knowledge, and then there's like knowing in your bones down to like the depth of your like soul or whatever you want to call it, you know, depth of consciousness or something. It's two completely separate. You know what's funny? That little clock makes it look like you have an earring.
Oh really? This one is
yeah, we were like sitting there, I was like, Steve, get an earring.
Oh, that's funny. It's waving too.
Yeah, dude, this is dope. You should get one of those.
Man, that's a funny deep. Yeah, wow. They should make clock like motorized earrings that like do all
motorized earrings. Oh man,
dude, man,
crazy.
That's our new Amazon Market thing. That is funny too, by the way. Like that's another fun cognitive like high hippy dippy thing, which is like foreground versus background, and like what you pay attention to and how things kind of come into one composite image. But anyway, you were talking. Oh, I was actually gonna like say that your comment of the whole "we are the universe experiencing itself" thing, I actually really like that one because I think it actually does balance the kind of more new agey spiritual side of things with the material side pretty well. Like, you know, you have physicists like saying the same thing often, and not being as unpalatable to science folks. So yeah, this idea that we are the universe, I think, has a lot of legs to it.
What is the that was definitely one of the biggest shifts I've had in my life. Like, I mean, if you want to narrow it down to like some like big like epiphanies, and when I say epiphanies, it sounds so dumb because like You know, like if I were to explain this to myself when I'm 25, I would be like, yeah, obviously, bro, like obviously we came out of the fucking ground. like where else would we come from? You know, like I know this because they taught me this in third grade, like third grade science. They taught me this shit third grade science. You know, core subject science, right?
Yeah.
Like how are you just realizing this now? But then like 25-year-old me wouldn't have realized like there's knowing from like reading a book and seeing like, you know, symbols of yeah, we came out of the ground because of this, because of that, because of that. And then like knowing as in like being in nature and then like fully like immersed and realizing it, like holy shit, like we came out of the ground just like all this other stuff, but uh we're all luckily born into homes, you know, with air conditioning and you know and like luxuries of life, you know, warmth, like clothes, like we don't have to hunt our food, you know, just go to the supermarket and just, you know, pick out some steaks or whatever, you know, when you're hungry, or even go to McDonald's, you don't have to cook the damn food yourself, just click a button.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, dude, imagine like a kid growing up nowadays, you click a fucking button and a hamburger shows up at your house 15 minutes later, bro. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Like that's not even real. That's like magic. That's literally magic. And
It's literally magic.
and like, or even like, oh yeah, dude, I need to buy a new like whatchamacallit. Yeah, remember where it used to be like, yeah, I gotta run a Target and I don't know, buy this thing. Click a fucking button, somebody will bring it to you in before the end
Yeah.
of the day. And pretty soon it's probably gonna be in like in 30 minutes when they figure out how to make like, these drones like work.
Yeah.
Um
That just
so
reminded me, imagine how like illuminating and lightning it would be to, so I love this theme of actually knowing where your shit comes from, right? And just like, you know, you go to a farm to see where your food comes from. But imagine if we could go to China and see our thing being produced and travel with it. Like, so this is like this thing, you know, like this, the whole life's journey of this thing just to arrive in my mailbox for a FedEx person just toss it on my doorstep.
it's like the Chinese iPhone factories, like little kids making Apple's
Yeah,
iPhones.
yeah.
And that's how they're like a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. There's Chinese child labor. I just made that
Magic,
up.
man.
I don't know if that's true. I feel like I read that somewhere on Twitter, but don't quote me on that. I don't want to be spreading false information here.
Sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
It's
Yeah,
too hard to be, it's too hard to be precise and true about everything, man. Everything comes with a caveat.
yeah. I wonder, man. That's crazy, dude. Just thinking about like, I feel like we talked a lot this conversation, but like the last thing we talked about, like kind of like growing up in homes in AC, and then like just seeing like me just seeing like, you know, Leo growing up and like he doesn't need to like do anything to get dopamine. Like he's probably had more dopamine in his little 3-year-old life than I had like well into my teenage years past. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean dopamine is very like, you know, the thing that makes us want to like get up and like you know, chase an animal to kill it to get food. Getting spoon fed to this kid, and you know, don't get me wrong, like I was getting spoon fed too. You know, my parents, I'm sure, you know, obviously not in the same manner. You know, I'm not like sitting there with an iPad in my face, like, you know, all this dopamine and food's getting shoved in my mouth. But
Yeah.
but like, you know, to some degree, you know what I mean? Like, and fuck, man, I wonder what this generation produces as far as like, you know, like you know, these are the challenges now. Like what challenges will we have, you know, when we live in a society with all these like, you know, like the internet, like cell phones, like everything's like so easy. It's like even easier than when we were kids. And then so like for our parents, right? I know our parents, probably specifically, I speak for my parents, but I'm assuming possibly you guys struggle through the same things. Like our parents were more like, if you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, they were focused on, you know, the bottom, you know, the pyramid. It's like safety and food, I think, or no, it's probably food first, food and water, and then safety, and then up. Next one, the third level is like belonging, friendships, like relationships. The next level is like self-esteem, prestige, things like that. And the last level is self-actualization, which is like achieving your like your full like potential. Like, that's like the pyramid that, um, but like for our parents, obviously I know my parents came over here in 75 and they're like poor and stuff like that and had no money. And then, they're trying to raise me and Z, uh, like obviously like the whole time they're focused on the bottom three rungs of the pyramid. It's like, yo, how do we make sure we have enough food for these guys to eat? Okay, now that we have enough food, how do we make sure that like we feel safe? Like we grew up in Woodbridge. Like, I mean, now we had a house down there, obviously felt safe, but then my mom was like, yo, man, this neighborhood's actually not that great. Let's move to Fairfax County, like it's a much nicer, safer neighborhood. So they were always trying to up that. And obviously family was always super important to us. So those bottom three rungs were always like this is it, this is what we focus on for them. How does that translate to a generation when you don't even have to worry about those bottom three rungs? I'm not saying everyone doesn't have to worry about it. I'm sure, like, I don't want to be, I don't want to like pretend like everyone's like, in a very fortunate situation where they don't have to worry about those rungs. But I'm pretty sure your kids aren't probably not going to have to like worry about those rungs the same way. Hopefully my kids won't either if we continue in the same trajectory. But then, like, what does it mean when you grow up in a society with those three rungs like pretty much like taken care of? Like, I think even if you're not doing too well in society, like you can still get food. Like, like you could probably still get some form of shelter through like government assistance and such. So there's like a layer that like kind of protects those bottom rungs on some level for much of the population. And then you start thinking about the next three. But then, like, now you have cell phones, now you have YouTube, now you have social media, now you have free flow of information, now you have like the internet, and then like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I just asked like 100 questions, bro.
Well, no, it's all good stuff. Like I'm tracking. I think that it always comes back to, this. I'm sure this topic came up when like TVs first came out, even, right? I mean, TV is pretty magical, addictive device in itself. But I think what people asking this question throughout history have always asked is that it's not so much like that this is going to happen at some point, or we understand that there's going to be like a incredibly big shift of some sort, but whether or not this is the inflection point, like this really is the like breaking through to the next level, the way where we're just unrecognizable from, like how 9/11 was an event where the world, the world before and the world after that was just completely different, right? Just on the course. And so I don't know, we're in that inflection point because of technology, precisely because of technology, right? Well, history will show us that with all technological innovations, right, there has been extreme wealth created at each and every turn, right? In like when we shifted to, I mean, just think about it. We're shifting from like hunter-gatherer, which is a fucking awful lifestyle, to an agrarian society where you're like, holy crap, like I can like just like get this rectangle. If I take care of the dirt, like food pops out of the ground, right? Like even that was like a major technological upgrade. And then we shifted to eating more grains because grains are fucking high calorie and amazing, right? But it's that with all of these advances, we haven't been smart about how to leverage the new found wealth, right? We end up just having our miserable existence kind of just like accentuated more. We have more leisure time enabled by technology than ever, but what we decided to do with it is just work more, right? And because we work more, when we're done with work, we're just so tired and spent that all we can do is consume, which numbs us more because consumption versus creation, right? Like the energy systems are completely different. Which is then where I think it goes to Andrew Yang's universal UBI concept, right? It's like, is this the time where we should lay down taking care of that bottom rung, redistributing time and energy back to the citizens of society, like, and like, not, I think we, especially in a capitalist society, fight against this idea that people are like lazy and undeserving of leisure. Like leisure is like, I mean, actually in a very real sense, we're founded on Protestant ethics, right? Like work is aligned with like sacredness and God, and leisure is like the opposite end of that. So I think that that's just going to have to happen somehow. Now, I'm not very optimistic about it, because if work from home was this thing that made sense to a lot of people for a long time. Yet the global pandemic was the only thing that gave us back our balance and our leisure, the ability to like do laundry while I do this and go pick up my prescription without losing like two hours or 2.5 hours of my day, like killing the environment, sitting in a smoke emitting death trap. So like,
funny how you put that.
Yeah, so it's I think that if we do it right, our kids should have to work less hard than us. But and not to diminish the severity or what our parents went through, the people went before us, but I still think by and large, like, humans are still expending the same amount of energy. The circumstances are less dire because it's not life and death, but I think humans are working harder, and we're burning out, right? We're working, and the games that we play now are less predictable. They're that it requires so much more to make it any kind of game, because you're talking about like creative work now, right? Intellectual work, like thought work. It's the automation revolution is going to happen at some point, right? Like, quote unquote. But here's the thing: not everyone's going to be equipped in this new world, right? That's Andrew Yang's point, right? Like, not everyone is going to be equipped to play in these new arenas where it demands a high level of like.
It changed too fast.
Yeah, change too fast. Like, a society should have a spot for everybody, right? Somehow to contribute, to work, to whatever at that level. But
is that
biology
true? Is that true? Is that a belief, or is that
that's a belief. That's a belief, right?
That's an ideal belief.
Yeah, that's an ideal belief. But I mean, like, yeah, of every group of people I work with, I'm with, whether it's my Muay Thai gym group or my office group or my group of friends, or like, everyone has a part to play, and they need someone needs something to do, right?
Talking about like a sense of belonging, or like connectedness with a greater cause or whole.
Right. And going back to the idea that creation is such a thing that we need to protect, right? And enable, like, humans, we need to create and contribute. It's something that's important there. It creates a sense of belonging too, because for people who can't contribute, they get all up in their head and anxious because they question their value and worth and whatever, but like, if they actually have a means of adding to the group and doing good and creating, then they don't have to like hypothesize about it. They know that, like, I did this thing that caused this thing to be better for everybody. Like, and now also everyone recognizes my role in the group as some type of contributor. And I think there's a lot of, it's very, that gives any group of people a strong fortitude, right? A resilience to feel valued and belonging. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty big idea. When you were earlier talking about, we should possibly redistribute the bottom rungs of the pyramid, and make it so, like, I guess as a society we protect people's time and stuff like that. I was like, are you talking about communism? Because I feel like they've tried that before, and um, it's really interesting because you do have to balance that somehow, right? If society like keeps like being able to automate shit, and it only goes to like the people that can afford like these automated robots and like the stocks of the companies that do that, then what the fuck's gonna happen to the people that can't? Like when automation like gets rid of like truck driving, and there's like 3 million people that didn't graduate from high school, and they're in like in their mid like 40s and 50s, and this is like I guess something that Andrew Yang brought to light when he was doing his campaign. What's gonna happen to those people? You know what I mean? Like I know some people will be like, oh yeah, you could just re-educate them to I don't know, but it's not that easy. You're not just gonna be able to take a dude, that's supporting a family of like 3 or 4, kids or whatever, and he's used to like driving a truck cross country, and that's his skill set, and he's like in his mid 40s, and then re-educate him. You know what I mean? Like, that is a problem that needs to be um, solved one way or another. And I don't know what happens, because the benefit of a capitalistic society is you're saying that you're making the incentives so great that like that people are going to find a way to like make the pie bigger for everybody, and that's how the whole thing works. It's like you need the incentive system to be like, yo, if you make the pie bigger for everybody, then you're going to get a pretty big chunk yourself. So everyone go figure out how to make the fucking pie bigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess the idea there is if everyone's incentivized to make the pie bigger, it'll be a bigger pie for everybody. So even if you're not making the pie bigger, we still got a bigger pie here. Like even if I was just like bullshitting my life for the last 30 years, I could still go on my phone and click 2 buttons and get a hamburger to show up at my house in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? I can still like use Amazon. I can still use Netflix. Like, I still have these like modern luxuries that like a king, like, 500 years ago would literally like not even be able to fathom, like in their wildest imagination. So I'm still living like a fucking king. Maybe not compared to like, the king that came up with how to do this, Jeff Bezos, but compared to like the king or even someone living 50 years ago, like a rich person living 50 years ago, they still have to deal with like more bullshit than we do. Like, so, I mean, it's like a push and a pull. And I don't want to get into a communism versus capitalism debate, obviously, because like, I don't think there's a right answer, because like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, there are people on the bottom rung that are having trouble with that shit. Why the fuck don't we help them? And I think the answer more so is because we're trying to balance this thing that's supposed to make like the pie bigger for everybody with, okay, like now that we got a big pie, when do we start dividing it like equally? Like, and do you ever do something like that? So, and obviously growing up, I mean, I voted for Bernie like every single chance I got, so I do mean like kind of like, oh yeah, we should totally like help these people and stuff like that. But then if you want to look at the other side of the argument, and like the people are saying like, hey, like if you start like taxing the super rich like X amount and stuff like that, a lot of people are gonna want to move their companies to like other countries and shit, and then like the pie gets smaller for like.
That's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're gonna.
That's a big one.
Obviously solve it. I mean, we're kind of like, I mean, we're probably an hour deep in this combo already, so obviously I don't think we're gonna solve that, but just to talk about both sides, because I don't think people understand, like, even have the nuance to be able to appreciate the argument of the other side. It's not, it's not, yo, we should totally be socialists, or we should totally be capitalists, or we should totally, only vote for Republicans or Democrats. It's not. It's way more fucking nuanced than that. But obviously, everything is bucketed. Like the way the mind works is like, okay, this is Republican, this is Democrats, and then like, and then even with those two things, they like kind of like put you on a spectrum where it's like red versus blue. Like how far are you, like left, right, central? But it's not a fucking line, bro. I mean? It's like this whole fucking like thing, and like
it's 3D, right?
It's definitely
arguably even more than that.
3D, and then bits and pieces and parts, and like this whole fucking mechanism it's more of a machine than a than like a fucking line that's like a
Mhm.
number, you know, like it's
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Metaphors are fucking crazy too. We can definitely go down that rabbit
Yeah.
hole, but
Yeah.
maybe
Mental models and stuff.
for like a future. Sorry, I like ingested a 20 milligram Adderall like probably 15 minutes in the call because I needed it.
Nice. That's awesome.
It probably came out in the last 30 minutes.
So I usually am medicated too. Usually just part of my routine to start the day that way. But this one I wanted to try no coffee, like completely. And
Yeah.
you know, it's funny because the conversation itself was stimulating in its own that like I feel like I'm on coffee, like medication right now, but I'm not actually.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really valid like other perspective and one that I think about often. But I think one thing that's worth tossing back into the ring for people is that, like, and to me, this is a belief, but I'm not an economist, or I didn't really study economics, but I think, I mean, regardless of your system, you need social welfare of some sort, right? Like I think for a lot of people in their mind, when they say capitalism or they think that those are two mutually exclusive things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in any system, any group, you have to have something that takes care of the bottom percentile.
Right.
Now, yeah, so I'm not necessarily saying like we're redistributing and reallocating towards, but we are to some degree, but it's only within the threshold of a floor.
Yeah,
right?
it's like what does society decide is the minimum
the floor,
that, like,
yeah.
you know, like
what do we define poverty in this country, right? And it doesn't, I don't think it's actually very sophisticated in terms of adjusting to region, or even adjusting, like, you know, man, and this is a huge rabbit hole too, where, and I won't go into as much, but for me, all paths lead to this, which is housing, like the lines in which we say, like, you know, this is a zip code, this is a district, this is a group of people, this is a what have you. I forgot my point.
You said it's a huge rabbit hole, and we're talking about capitalist versus whatever.
Oh.
It's not black and white. It's kind of like there's a floor, and
yeah. Like how do you define poverty? How do you assess like a given geographical like zone, right? Oh, this one, and we do this through our real estate all the time. Oh, it has good proximity to a school rated with this low crime score, and it has a grocery store here and a church here. You know what I mean? That is a robust, like, you know,
ecosystem of like
yeah,
houses
right.
and such. Yeah.
It must have, like, when you play Sim City or something, like everything has to, like, I remember when I was playing one of those old, like, yeah, Civ games or whatever, and it was like, oh, you've researched what is it? Oh, firefighting, like the ability to, like, a fire station, and you have to like spread them perfectly so that if a fire broke out, the fire truck could get there fast enough. Remember Great Chicago Fire? We used to live in a world where if there was a fire, like the entire city went down. Like, oh, sorry, we just didn't have a way of taking care of fire, and like
to build the whole city out of wood too. Like makes it a whole lot easier.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Like the wind kicks up, and then someone starts a fire. It's a wrap.
It's just over. It's over. Yeah. So when it comes to I jumped onto this topic because of the poverty definition. But yeah, what and it was a jump off point when you said, like, what does society deem to be the different thresholds of you know, what's the absolute floor? You know, what's the absolute floor for someone who's has these means versus the absolute floor for someone who's like disabled, or disabled in this way, but like this, you know, it's tough. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so many rabbit holes. I was just thinking about the video game rabbit hole we can just go down right now. About how like these stupid ass games we play when, like Sim City, you know, you probably played that in like, you know, in like Mr. Reynolds like 7th grade shop class, and you're sitting on clicking, and you're like, you know, just thinking I'm just playing this like stupid ass game, right?
You think Mr. Reynolds knows that we just said his name right now? Isn't it crazy? Like, you never forget your teachers. Like, you never forget your teacher.
No, he doesn't know, but that dude was dope as shit, man. I remember he had a PlayStation in his freaking like class, and then the way that they distributed PlayStation Play was based on ability, which was amazing because I was just kicking ass at the game. I was always on that thing. And it was like you get one turn, but you get to play till your turn's finished. And then we had this one game called IQ where like it's like a puzzle game, and if you solve one puzzle, you get to go to the next one. And then the way that it was like divided wasn't like, oh, you get 10 minutes. And then he gets 10 minutes. It's a fucking one-player game. It was like you get to play until your turn ends. And then he also incentivized, like, if you get a high score, then I'll give you a free soda. And I was like, so every single time I would literally just be playing for like 45 minutes straight, and no one else would get a chance to play. But I mean, that's the I guess it was a little bit of a, I don't want to call that maybe a capitalistic society that benefited myself. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, incentives are crazy, man. I think like, we could spend a whole lot of time talking about incentives. We can spend a whole lot of time talking about stupid ass video games we used to play that actually, like SimCity obviously taught us a lot. I know StarCraft, I mean, you play a lot of that stuff. I don't know if
let's talk about video games next.
Okay.
Because that's actually, I was thinking, I did a 5-mile run yesterday, and I was thinking about video games a lot during that. Just because I was thinking about, told a story about how you all used to go to the arcades, and like I was thinking about how valuable, like after you've died, like looking up in the screen and seeing how many credits you had left, or knowing how much change you had in your pocket, like that was constituted another go, right? And that's so valuable, like the another chance, right?
Don't need to write this shit. I'm gonna write this. Keep talking. I'm gonna write some of this stuff down in our parking lot topics. I'm gonna make a. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's do it. So, and I think one thing as a society that it would help us so much to understand more is that it is a game, right? And you always get another try. Like unless you actually ultimately die, pass away, you just get infinite tries at anything, right? And it's a whole mindset that I think that gaming helps to implant for us at a young age. I just remember sometimes being relentless with it, like, oh, much, run it back. I'm gonna do another one, right? Like, those video, like, told me about that ritual in video games where to queue up, you put your quarter on the machine.
Yeah.
Each people own a quarter, right? And you just go and you just keep playing, and it's just this, this thing, this self-organizing, this like little world universe in itself, right? And yeah, I don't know, an attempt, an attempt is such an interesting, like a shot, like a move for it, like having a go at something, getting another go at it. You get another go at it, like,
oh man, this shit brings up memories. Timeout at
Springfield Mall.
At Springfield Mall. The one on the bottom floor was the one where you'd like you had like those crowds around the Tekken machines and Mortal Kombat. And the one upstairs more like family oriented, where you like win tickets and trade them in for animals and stuffed animals or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, man. Competition is that's another buzzword in this whole capitalist economy, game theory.
I think sports is huge, man. Dude, I learned so much from playing sports that like and like I learned so much from playing sports, and they're like not lessons that you learn from like books and such, but you definitely learn. Like imagine all the years when we went through VSA and then all of us like learn how to play flag football, and then like even some years, I don't remember if you coached or not, but I coached for a few years even after college, and then like learning what I knew as a player, when I was like just kind of and then always having like do we try to like balance like fairness to people that show up to practice, or do we like make it so we just play our best players so we win? And then even like on the field, you have to strategize and get everyone to understand, hey, this is the battle plan, this is the game plan, this is what we're trying to do as a team. And so your role is this, and if you do this while this person's doing that, then we have our best chance of winning. And then not only getting everyone to understand the battle plan, but then making sure you put people in the places where their capacity is maximized too. And then you have to do that amongst a group of like, 18 to 21-year-old kids that obviously all, or at least some of them have egos, they want to show off in front of their fucking like girlfriend or whatever the fuck. or whoever they're crushing on in VSA at the time, and then some people don't have the capacity to understand the whole mechanism of the whole. So when you bench their ass, they're fucking pissed because obviously their ego is like, yo, why is this guy telling me like, and you're just like, dog, like my head hurts. Just like you can't catch, bro. Like I can't play you a receiver because you can't catch, bro. I don't care if your girlfriend like wants to see you get a touchdown. That shit probably ain't gonna happen. It's not for the greater good. Can I explain that to you? And obviously I'm like this like fucking like 19-year-old kid that's probably like cocky and shit too, unaware of my ego, probably trying to explain it to this other fucking kid that's unaware of his ego, and then we're just like, I mean, imagine how much you learn in sports, and I've come a long way, of course, and I'm 36 now, but yeah, just like looking back on that, it's funny as shit.
I'm gonna tie it off of this, your question of kids growing up with so much dopamine and how are we gonna like counteract that? I think sports is a very viable antidote mitigation for that. You get dopamine hits from sports too, right? You get rewarded. It's fun, but it also has to be sustained. And there's an element of practice and investment and all these things. Like, I mean, sports, I put on an altar for sure. Like if there's like a hall of like the most fundamental, important things, sports has its own like almost wing. So, and I think that inoculates us against a lot of things that society will throw at you. And so I'll offer that up as a optimistic path. It's not that we haven't had sports or nothing's going to change or there's anything groundbreaking, but maybe just for us all to remember and be a bit more intentional. And especially as Asians, right? Man, Asians don't have a sport culture. We got solo sports.
It's not practical.
Yeah, it's not practical.
Dude,
if you do it, it's like tennis or like golf or like, it's so, but imagine if our parents they came in with an appreciation for like, maybe not football, whatever, but like, I don't know.
Basketball,
sports, man.
like anything.
Yeah, anything. Like cooperation and like putting cooperation and competition into the same thing and letting it,
I'm actually curious what different sports attract different personalities, and if you play different. And when I say different, I mean like, okay, imagine I was a rock climber. Me against the fucking, like if I was bouldering, me against this fucking wall. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're a runner, it's you against like yourself. That's it, right? That's individual sport. Even tennis, I guess you're playing against somebody, but it's you like you're so like a fighter. You're a Muay Thai fighter. Once you get in the ring, like I know you have a team that backs you, supports you, and like and you carry more than just yourself into the ring. But once you're in the fucking ring, it's like everything. Like there's no the ultimate equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're like.
It's ridiculous, man. Like in football, a team sport, if on a play you could like half-ass it, or you made a mistake and no one really saw it, and maybe like the coaches when they review the film, they'll be like, "What the fuck, you missed your block here," or whatever, or you took a bad step.
Right.
But like in fighting, it's like or like in any of these one-on-ones or solo sports, like you just
and even
it's all there.
And even in collective sports like basketball, me and Z take a completely different philosophy on how to win the game, like completely. And I'm talking about Z, my older brother, for people that might be the 4 viewers that we have that are listening that might not know. He's like Kobe Bryant. This dude has Mamba mentality. He will go to the gym and outwork 99% of his opponents, because he'll just be, practicing the same shot for 3 hours a fucking day until he can, just like shoot it against a double team in a game without even thinking twice about it. He will just, put in the hours and keep practicing the same repeatable, like boring fucking shit until his body like downloads the ability to do it unconsciously. I'm lazy, so I don't do that shit. But what I do is like when we play basketball, to me, it's like a game of chess. We have 5 players against their 5 players, and our 5 players have, I guess, like different capacities compared to theirs. So what you do is you put the pieces together and then you explain the strategy. And you have our 5 pieces work together so that we're greater than the sum of its individual parts. And that's the part I'm interested in. You know what I mean? So collective sports, I feel like they teach, but the best players are obviously the ones like LeBron James, like understands, like he's considered like the like possible GOAT, like him or Jordan. But people, the thing that's crazy about him is not only is he like this athletic specimen, that's like the greatest athlete of our time probably, but people always say, like, if you watch him play, he always makes the right play. He always makes the right play. He always makes the right play. And maybe that's what it takes to be the fucking GOAT. You can't just, you know, put your head down and work hard. You got to be able to see how the pieces fit together too. And yeah, so when we're talking about individual team sports like tennis, and I know basketball has, the reason I love basketball, it just has like, it has a very individual element, you know, just a culture around basketball. You know, you cross a player up and you make them look stupid and everyone's like, you know, like, he's embarrassed, right? That's the individual part of it, right? But then as a team, you work together, and it doesn't matter how skilled you are. If you're playing against 5 average people that work together well and you're not working together, you're not going to win the game either.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, other sports, you're wearing all this gear, you can't even see the person, or you know, in soccer, it's like super zoomed out, and you're like looking at these tiny little things. But in basketball, you're like, yo, that's person, that's his brand, that's his swag. You know, that person. There's only 10 of them on the court.
NBA forces that too. They literally fine you if you don't get a microphone shoved in your face with reporters asking you questions for like, you know, 20 minutes after you just like, you know, lost game 7 is the biggest game of your life. And maybe you fucking blew it, and they're like, what did you think you did there too? You know, and like they're literally shoving the microphone in your face to like, you know, make you talk so that they can write a narrative around it. And then so as humans, we're like, holy shit, there's individual, there's team, there's drama. Like, you know, James Harden doesn't like playing with this person and people don't like playing with James Harden because he's all offense, no defense. And then everyone's like, and then I'm sure the basketball players, they're like, what the fuck? But they get paid a lot, so it's chill.
Sportsman.
Yeah.
So I gotta run.
Yeah.
This was awesome.
Dude. Yeah.
I am. We can retro later, but in closing, I do want to say that, yeah, I'm not in any rush to. I still to like accelerate the podcast format. Like I trust that it will organically happen for us. I think again that the transcription and the upload and the archiving is in the generation of lead topics is really good. And then ultimately it's like kind of what is slowly like how our life is slowly fitting around it, right? Like, man, this 6:30 wake up, just like you said, I'm laying in bed going like, I gotta wake up for this. Like I gotta be here for this.
Yeah, I know I was 10 minutes late today, but this is like one of the things I'm like, all right, yeah, I have to. It's like like 2 a.m. I'm like laying in bed. I'm like, all right, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like this thing doesn't move. You know what I mean? Like this thing doesn't move for me. Like I mean, I know it moved 10 minutes, but you know, like it doesn't move as in like there's no excuse around it. You know, so no, I appreciate that, man. I'll upload this one onto YouTube. It's probably gonna be like an hour and a half long or some shit. But I mean, I don't think anyone's listening to it. And then if I know you're probably busier than I am, but if at any point you ever want to link up and then we'll just like do like a work session where we're just kind of like, all right, what are the next steps if we want to dig a little deeper, or we don't have to dig deeper, but we can just be like, all right, let's start thinking about topics or like whatever you want to do, like 1 hour. It could be on Zoom too.
Let's absolutely do it. And where I'm very encouraged, and I can say that confidently, is because you rewind a week ago. And one of the things I realized was that like my life was not set up. I need to make more space for this. And even within that week, like good stuff has happened. So I like this benchmark, this check-in every time to see like how I'm doing. And definitely in the week since we talked last, like I want to continue to build towards that work, like, you know, to having that dedicated time for this for sure.
Let's just make it absolute minimum is we meet 6:30 on Wednesday, or if we have to move that, we can move that. But once a week for sure, we just have a conversation, minimum 40 minutes. And then that's the bottom, like, you know, if I don't do that, then you have the right to be pissed off at me. And I'll hold you accountable for that too. But if we have more capacity, if we're like, hey, like, you know, this week we could do another hour. Like I don't want to be like, hey, this week let's just spend a whole day. Like that's too much of a heavy lift.
So let's try this, right? Let's try this. We kind of had this fun idea of going with the 40-minute limit time cap. But we've like went over that so many times, and we budgeted at we actually have like more like an hour on this. How about we, for the next one, we say 40 minutes strict, and then that remaining time that we would have just used to go over and flex, let's just do some work.
But you know, okay, so I don't mind doing that. We can totally try that. But I do think our last 40 minutes was much better than our first 40 minutes.
Yeah,
and I think the reason it kept going was because, like, you know, like we're about to end, but then like started talking about video games and capitalism versus like, and we're just like, holy shit, like all the good shit's coming out. So I mean, I'm down to do whatever, or like what we could do is, because like I wouldn't even mind like cutting half this podcast and just getting the good part and just throwing it out there. But I'm down to do like whatever, and I do think I would be open to doing a work session, like, you know, randomly in the middle of the week too. Like, you know, just like, you know, if you have like an hour on Saturday, we just both log on Zoom, figure out the top 3 most important things that we probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And then just literally just, I take one, you take one, and then we do two Pomodoros and call it a day. But I do not want to go from not doing any work on the podcast to like, all right, we got to do A, B, C, and D. And like,
yeah,
I want to, it needs to be time boxed. It needs to be like kind of, 1 hour, an extra hour isn't going to kill us, but I feel like an extra, like, you know, like, yo, let's do a whole day work day. That's way too much, but only when we have capacity to do so. And I'm definitely open to trying the 40-minute cap and then just like work on shit too.
sounds good. All right, let's do it, man. Sorry, I gotta jump.
All right, man. Talk later, bro. Thanks, Steven. Have a great day.
See ya.